All right, welcome back to Men Pursuing More. I'm your host, Roger Mop, and today I'm honored to welcome Matt Rytting to the show. So, Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
And Matt, I know you've lived a remarkable life marked by service, adventure, leadership, entrepreneurship, and ultimately a life-changing encounter with God. He served our country for 22 years. So thanks for your service as a lieutenant
You're very
colonel
welcome.
in the United States Air Force, flying Sea Eagle and the F-4 Phantom. Today, he continues to fly as a Delta Airlines as a first officer pilot while building a thriving business with 4 OsteoStrong locations. So, Matt, welcome to Men Pursuing More podcast.
Thanks, Roger. Good to be here.
All right, let's get into some quick hit questions for the listeners. And the first one is, what was your favorite all-time aircraft to ever fly?
So I got to fly the F-15C, and anybody who knows that I flew that is going to obviously go to that as the obvious first. And I tell you what, it is amazing to have that much power and capability at your fingertips. So it was absolutely amazing privilege to be able to fly that thing. But I'll tell you, flying is flying. People don't realize, people who don't get to fly those things think that those are so much better. But the reality is you can enjoy flying in whatever you do. So I got to fly de Havilland Beavers in the Alaska Civil Air Patrol. And that airplane, radial engine, old aircraft, 8-place. And it just, oh man, the first time I flew it, I was like, oh my gosh, the thing is awesome. And then really anything with floats, like float flying is just a different experience entirely. It's like a very Zen experience, like to be on a plane, on the water, looking down. It's hard to pick just a single favorite.
Oh, that's awesome. Appreciate that, you sharing that. So what's more exhilarating, like landing a F-15, skydiving, or flying for Delta?
It was funny you ask it that way, because if I did what would make it exhilarating for me, I'd have probably 300 complaints from the back, and I would not last very long at Delta. So I can't say Delta is the most exhilarating. I enjoy the flying tremendously, but I'd get in trouble for anything exhilarating there. So between the F-15 and the skydiving, I'd have to say skydiving. Like when you parachute into a stadium and the crowd, you get down low and you swoop in and the crowd just roars and you can hear them roar. Like I jumped into Allianz Stadium there in Minnesota, and it's got a partial roof.
Oh, yeah.
And so some of the crowd can't see you, and you just come zooming in through the roof and surprise them, and they erupt. And that is you can actually feel it. It's fantastic.
So with parachuting, what's the limit to how high you can be when you jump out? And like, what's the lowest? Like
The lowest is 2,000 feet.
2,000 feet.
For us, yeah, if we're going to do a show, we're not getting out if the weather's keeping us below 2,000 feet. You just want time for your parachute to open.
And then how high can a plane go where you can jump out? It doesn't.
We do our shows at 6,000 feet generally.
Yeah.
But you've seen the Red Bull athletes or whatever, they've jumped out at about 126 or 130,000 feet out of space capsules and things like that. I'm in the military. I was in combat control teams. I got to jump out of C-130s at 25,000 feet, both free fall, falling for 2 minutes.
Wow.
Before deploying my parachute, which is an amazing thought, right? To just fall for 2 minutes. But we also did halo jumps where we would get out and pull our chute immediately and use that altitude to travel a distance as an insertion minute. For anybody who's watching skydiving, you even just go for one tandem. It's so easy. You just show up at a drop zone, you pay your fee, and you get to go for a skydive. And it is literally a life changer. Things that used to be scary for you are not going to be scary anymore.
I know my 20-year-old daughter, one of the things on her bucket list is to skydive someday. I don't know if my wife's too crazy about that, but that's one of her bucket list.
Someday, does someday ever come? Make it this weekend.
Yeah, tell her, honey, before you go back to college,
yeah, why not? Why not?
And then
you talk about men pursuing more, right? What's the best way to get something done? Is to go do it, right? What's the hardest step of any run? Is the first step out the door. Tony Robbins has a saying, don't ever leave the location or the point of inspiration without taking some action. It's easy to say someday. Someday? When does someday? Make it happen. Make it tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I love Tony Robbins. All right, favorite place you've flown to? I know you've flown to places all over the world.
I'll tell you the two that really stand out for me. For some reason, for as beautiful as Amsterdam is, Rome just had a vibe that was fantastic. And I was there. I hear it can be busy and dirty and stuff. It wasn't when I was there. Just walking through those high ancient walls just had a certain aura that I can't explain and that I really want to share with my family. I'd love to take my family there someday. The other one is Johannesburg. You go down to South Africa, and I would go on just a single overnight safari on my layover. And it's so extraordinary to see a giraffe or a rhinoceros in the wild in their habitat rather than a zoo. You see it in the zoo and it's one thing, but when you see it out in the wild, it's literally a dinosaur. Like, why is there a dinosaur on the earth right now? And you get to see so many extraordinary things. So I took my family there. It inspired me to take the family. We had an amazing family trip to Africa.
When they listen to your podcast, they're going to say, hey, Dad, or your wife's going to say, honey, we need to go to Rome.
Yep.
You brought it up.
We do. And it shouldn't be someday, right? It should be sometime soon.
That's right. And then last one, favorite all-time sports team.
All right. So for me, I don't know. I don't know if this is tied to emotion or what, but when I was young, like grade school, I used to collect the trading cards and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved the Oakland Raiders and the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm dating myself, but we're talking Roger Staubach, Drew Pearson, Ed Too Tall Jones,
Yes.
Tom Landry, those kind of guys. And then with the Raiders, Ken Stabler and Lester Hayes, the guy with the stickum before they outlawed
Oh, yeah.
stickum.
Yeah, I remember that.
So again, most people probably had no idea what I'm talking about, but that was my guys. And then, so I think at some point, really pretty early in my life, I decided that I would rather be a player or a participant than a watcher. So I think I chose to, I'd rather be doing something, but playing sports than watching them during my weekends. So I've not really become an adult super fan. So I guess my favorite teams are from my youth.
All right. Hey, I'm a hardcore Dallas Cowboy fan ever since I was about 2 years old. And I didn't even grow up in Texas. I grew up in Iowa.
Okay.
That was my team, the Dallas Cowboys, and still are.
So you know the names that I'm talking about, right?
I do. I know those names. Yes.
Tony Dorsett, man. Tony Dorsett was awesome.
I had a guy on the podcast, Sterling Harris, back, I don't know, 6-8 months ago. And his uncle is Jethro Pugh. He was a defensive tackle, defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
So pretty cool how he grew up. And then he ended up making it into the NFL for a few years as well, the Sterling Harris.
Very nice. Very nice.
All right, let's get to your story and growing up.
Sure.
So share with us, you grew up in a Christian home. From a young age, you also dreamed of dreamed of entrepreneurship. And tell us about your childhood, about activities you were involved in, some of the values maybe your parents instilled in you, and why at a young age you realized that you wanted to build something on your own.
So I think my mom was an entrepreneur, and I think that just rubbed off on me, right? How many sons become what their father is? My son's in the process of doing that right now. So she exhibited an entrepreneurial spirit. She had an interior design company that sold on the home party plan, like home interiors back in the day. And so I worked in her business as a really young kid. I would pack boxes. People would get orders, and we had our business in our basement, and I would pack orders and ship them from the basement. She taught me how to do the presentation, like with this board, and you put up sconces and lights and stuff like that. And so I got to present to my grandma's friends and sell interior stuff. But it started even before that, though. Like when I was 6 years old, I don't know why, but we had a garden and I would sell the vegetables door to door. And then in my mom's interior design business, one time she got a big box of barbecue tools, like accidentally. And I guess it wasn't easy to return or whatever. And so I sold barbecue tools door to door. So I always just had this desire to be honest, the root of it was to make money. Yeah. And so when you talk about values, it was an entrepreneurial spirit, but also an idea that work brings reward. And I'm not sure I've ever really thought of it in those terms. And that would actually explain a lot about me. If I operate on the principle that work equals reward, I work a lot. I play a lot, but I work a lot too. And that would make a lot of sense. That would be something that was instilled in me, a value that was instilled in me at an early age.
And you had other brothers and sisters growing up?
I've got a 5-year younger brother.
Okay. And is he still, because you grew up in, what state again did you grow up in?
Colorado. I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado,
Okay.
northern Colorado.
Okay. And then you spent all your childhood days, you didn't move around up until you graduated?
Close to college. My junior year in high school, I moved out to a suburb of Washington, D.C.
Okay. All right. So what activities were you involved in, other like sports activities or other activities during your time?
Oh yeah. I don't know I don't know how old you are, but in my day, we did all the sports. You know, kids nowadays, they do one, they do it year round, they
Yep.
do it at home, they do it in other states. It's crazy, right? But when I grew up, we played baseball, we played basketball, soccer, football,
Yeah.
track. And so I did all the sports and enjoyed all of them. I was in Boy Scouts and made a career of that while I was in it. And those are the things that kept me busy
Yeah, you're speaking my
and,
language.
and,
Yeah.
and
With all those
straight.
things, yeah.
It kept me straight.
Boy Scout. I think I made it through Weeblo. I didn't make it. I think the Cub Scouts, Weeblo. I didn't make it to Boy Scouts. I think my brother
Okay. Yeah.
went on the Boy Scouts, my older brother, but yeah, playing sports all the way through, even through the summertime
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And it was just a season followed the next, right? You had different seasons. Again, unlike our kids today who get 3 weeks off a year or whatever.
Now moving on. So once you graduated, what inspired you or drew you to military aviation? And what were some of the lessons learned in the military during you spent 22 years in the service? Can you share that kind of why the military and then just some of those experiences in the military for 22 years?
Yeah. So why the military is easy. So I went to the Air Force Academy and I knew I was going there or I wanted to go there from a very early age, like 6th, 7th grade. And the reason is simple. Who's got the coolest jets, right? I knew I wanted to fly. And who's got the coolest airplanes? It's the Air Force. Now, the Navy obviously was a competitor there, but the Navy also has a lot of boats, right?
Yeah.
And anytime you're in the military, you do not have 100% control of what you're doing. So I figured the odds were more in my favor with the Air Force than the Navy. So went to the Air Force Academy and got to fly fighters, some of the best 3rd and 4th generation fighters that we've ever had. You asked about lessons learned. I would say that one of the most poignant lessons that I learned was that the emphasis of top-down leadership cannot be overemphasized. I was flying F-15s in Okinawa, Japan, an amazing assignment. The best fighter by far we had at the time. And when I started, we had an amazing leader. Everybody loved him. Everybody would follow him to their death if necessary, right? But he was replaced, and he was replaced by a guy who was really more about himself. And that's another lesson is when you're a leader, you should be a servant leader. It's not all about you and your reputation and climbing your ladder. But this guy was. And I tell you what, he took F-15 pilots in a beautiful location and turned them into people who were like, get me out of here. Give me a white jet, a trainer, send me anywhere. Just get me out of this place. And it was literally the man at the top that influenced that whole culture. I think that's true in really most organizations.
Well, the leadership guru, John Maxwell, talks about that too. He says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So you don't have good leadership. Look at the impact that has.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Oh yeah. They just say, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to fly anymore. It's really discouraging for, remember, those people that it's all about themselves instead of serving others and having that servant heart.
Yeah.
Now,
As a leader, your job is to be facilitating the people below you. You're serving the people below you, allowing them to do the best they possibly can at whatever their part of the mission is. And of course, having a clear mission is an important part of leadership as well.
and I've had a number of military guys on, and some of them describe it as that tribal, like that brotherhood they have. And all of them have kind of talked about this, that kind of transition after military service. Some call it in the civilian life. And show that experience. Some say, hey, it's a challenging time. And just share with the listeners about that transition from the military into, retiring from the military into this kind of civilian life for the listeners.
Okay. So as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, I was working pretty hard, long hours. The list never got done. I traveled a lot, was away from the family a lot, spent 6 months in Afghanistan. So it's a somewhat consuming career. When I stepped out and I stepped directly into the airlines, I was fortunate to literally step out and step in. It was a huge blessing to my wife. she was like, oh my gosh, I love this. When you're home, you're home. You don't have to be, once I step away from a trip, I can go home and literally not think about it until I go back to my next trip, which was not the way it was in the Air Force. And she loved that. Unfortunately, I'm not wired that way. For me, you mentioned the camaraderie, but there's also kind of the mission orientation and the trying to make something better. And for me, getting somebody safely from point A to point B, I know it's important to them, but it just didn't fulfill me to the degree that I needed. So I started searching for something where I could create a greater contribution. And I was looking at interviewing with the chief pilot office, where I could be somebody who helps the pilots locally and works for the company and just has a greater role. But I also started looking into entrepreneurship. And once I got into entrepreneurship, there wasn't room for anything else. But it filled my void of having more of a mission, more of a purpose, more of a challenge. But it did not and has not served my wife as well as me just being an airline pilot would have.
Do you feel that veterans, you think a lot of them have that kind of mentality? It's, I want to do more. I just coming out that kind of transition part of sometimes they don't feel like they've accomplished much, or they just.
I think it's how you're wired. I am wired like I don't stop. I don't sit down. I don't stop. If I'm on vacation, we have to rest when we get home from the vacation. It's just the way I'm wired. And I'm not sure everybody's wired that way. But I tell you what, let's go back to camaraderie though for a moment. That is definitely something that changes. There is just not that when you are in an organization or in an environment where you're potentially doing risky activities together, things that you could die from, things like that. And the camaraderie is just unmatched. I had an incredible blessing, God moment on a van in San Jose, California at 5 a.m. one morning, where I get into the crew van to go fly. And there's a guy in the back talking about parachuting. And the captain that I was flying with knew that I parachuted. And he goes, hey, Matt parachutes. And the guy in the back was like, hey, you should talk to my son. He started the Patriot parachute team. And he's a Navy SEAL who got out and found this other calling. And so I had the opportunity to interview and get selected to the Patriot parachute team. And I'm with mostly Navy SEALs or Navy SEAL support guys, explosive ordnance disposal guys, the civilian instructors who train SEALs how to free fall. The guys are amazing. They're really just a world-class set of guys. And I get to parachute with them and jump into stadiums with them. And so that camaraderie that I had in the military is something that I can get from this team. And in fact, Isaiah, the owner, talks about that. He talks about his team as being a place where people can make that transition out of the military and still do things that bring them that sense of team, that sense of camaraderie, and to be honest, too, a little bit of that sense of adrenaline.
Yeah, I've heard a number of the veterans I've had on talk about that as well, about that. I mean, warrior to warrior. We just understand each other. A number of them have formed like groups like that they still stay in touch and stay connected throughout the day or week, just to kind of, because they understand each other, what they've been through, and they just talk about how helpful that's been for them going forward.
Yeah, I was in the Air Force. I didn't experience anything traumatizing. I was up high. I was way up high. I never really saw anything. So there's some guys that you're talking about who have seen and experienced and endured much more than I. And for those guys in particular, that sense of understanding with somebody else is critical, right? Because otherwise they're alone. Because who else can relate? Nobody can relate to that. I can't relate to that, to be honest. So it's good that those men have somebody that they can turn to, talk with, and be understood without even having to say everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've learned so much and been so humbled just to kind of learn not only just their stories, but that transition from military to civilian life and what they're doing now to really kind of impact going forward.
Yeah.
So while even serving and flying professionally, you had that entrepreneurial dream that never left you. So you shared about Tony Robbins. I know Tony Robbins really made an impact on myself, kind of late 90s, early 2000s. One of the people who really inspired you early in your journey. What impact did his teaching have on your mindset, and what eventually led to the launch of OsteoStrong?
So Tony Robbins is literally the reason there's OsteoStrong more OsteoStrongs in Minnesota. I went to Unleash the Power Within And I got to take Sissy, my wife, with me down to Miami. You know, one of the cool things that does events is you get to walk through coals. So that's it's a fun thing to do, a fun challenge. But they also, Joseph McClendon III, one of his proteges or staff members, does something called the Dickens exercise. And what he does is allows you or invites you to find an area of your life where you have limiting beliefs. So you want to do something, you're inspired, but you think maybe, as I did with business, am I too late in life? Have I lost the fire? Do I have the time? All these things that are limiting beliefs that prevent you from moving forward. And so through this exercise, he leads you through crushing those limiting beliefs and literally replacing them with empowering beliefs. So I walked out of that singular experience, that Dickens exercise, with the decision that I don't need to be an entrepreneur. I have a full military retirement. I've got a great job as a Delta pilot. I don't need to be an entrepreneur, but there's a gap between who I am and who I perceive myself to be, right? So that gap is an uncomfortable gap. I should be an entrepreneur. I haven't reached my potential if I'm not an entrepreneur. I've wanted to be an entrepreneur ever since I was a child. So I left that exercise knowing that it was time to become an entrepreneur and that I didn't need to believe those limiting beliefs. And so I walked out on the patio and they were advertising OsteoStrong franchises. Tony Robbins has our equipment in each of his houses and he uses them. His wife Sage uses them. He believes in what we do. And for me, it was something that matches my values. I value health. I value wellness. I value aging well. I value performance. So I thought I tend to be overly analytical. And in this case, I was like, you know what? Here it is. It's here today. It matches my values. It matches my wife's values. She's a triathlete, an Ironman triathlete, and somebody who was taught literally body pumps, spin, yoga, everything else. So it fit our values. And I thought, if nothing else, this will be my feet wet exercise or my feet wet business. And so I did the due diligence, if you will, and hopped into my first OsteoStrong about coming up on 6 years ago.
So what is this, how is this different than other fitness? There's a lot of fitness, Snap 24, there's Lifetime Fit. How is it different
Right.
than other fitness vocations that some may look into or want to be a member of? How is that different than maybe some of these other fitness?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So all of those things focus on one or two things. When you go to any of those places, Roger, what are you working on? What are you making better?
Yeah, I think health-wise, I think I already do cardio playing basketball. So
Cardio?
Yeah, for me, it's really working on my strength.
Muscle.
Muscle, yes.
So when you go to one of those places, you're working on really one of two things. Your cardio, super important. Your heart health is absolutely critical. Or you're working on your muscle health, getting your biceps, getting your back muscle strong, your thighs, your muscular strength, which is also extremely important, particularly as we age. People have a difficulty keeping their muscle as they age. And when the muscle regulates so many things. So having and keeping muscle, super critical. So cardio and muscle are both important. When you go to the gym, to Lifetime, to Snap, to your Pilates, you go swimming, any of those things, do any of those things adequately work on your bones, your skeletal system? Or is it even ever occurred to you that your bones also need to be worked out?
Yeah, not that I know of.
No. And so that is the reality. Yeah, it's not talked about. It's actually starting to become talked about more and more. It's actually entering the mainstream. But up until now, nobody has ever thought, I need to go to the gym and work on my bones. Nobody. Now, that said, there are plenty of people whose bones deteriorate. And in fact, all of our bones are deteriorating. From age 30 on, we reach peak bone mass at age 30. And then from then, it's just a continued decline. And it's only 1%, 0.5%, maybe 1.5%. It's small increments each year. But if that starts at age 30 and you're losing, say, 1% each year, where are you at age 60, right? So the reality is we're all losing bone. And in fact, Roger, if I told you that 1 out of 4 of us men, so let's imagine 4 guys playing pickleball, 1 in 4 of those guys is statistically going to fracture a bone in their lifetime because their bones have deteriorated and become weak and brittle and thin. But for women, it's even worse. It's literally 1 in 2 women. So you've got 2 women having coffee. Literally one of them statistically is going to have a fracture in her lifetime because of low bone density. During menopause, women's bone health just plummets. It just rapidly decreases during those years of menopause and shortly thereafter. So the question is, what do you do about it? Because those people care about their bone at some point when their doctor. And so the other thing is it's a silent disease, right? You don't know until you get a bone density scan. And most people don't until they're in their 60s. And men are rarely prescribed this scan. So it's not something that's been on your radar or anybody else's, but yet it's something that affects all of us or near most of us or many of us late in life. If you compared this to any other disease, there'd be a major uproar. But the reason there isn't is because historically doctors haven't had the opportunity to do anything about it. They could either watch you get worse or they could put you on drugs that might build bone density, but the bone that it builds is brittle. You're actually more prone to fracture taking those drugs than without it. So not a good option. What do you do when you can't do much? But now there's OsteoStrong. It's based upon a simple thing called osteogenic loading, where you come in and you apply pressure to your bones. You stress those bones, if you will, and it triggers a natural response in your brain where without drugs, you can start building bone again, which reduces your fracture risk and allows you to carry more muscle because you can't carry more muscle than your bones will allow. So when your bones decrease, your muscle decreases. So all these things lead to a better life later, less fractures, better balance, the ability to keep doing the things that you love.
So what you do is it's like a program where you look at each and every individual, a male or female, whatever age.
Yeah.
And sounds like they need to have some type of scan done, bone density, see where they're at. Number 2 is they put them on some type of program, a cardio and kind of lifting type of program. And then I'm sure
So
it's
that
what,
would,
go ahead.
that would actually be separate. We want you doing those things, but that's not our specialty. Our specialty is the bone building.
Okay, the bone building. Okay. And the bone building would be, through your program, would be more the lifting, like the bone building, but also maybe what you intake, because they always talk about, it's not just what you're lifting, but what are you intaking into your body that can
Yeah. So you make it
build those muscles.
correct. Yeah.
strengthen
So you make
those.
you make a great point. Is it requires a stimulus to build the bone, right? You cannot sit on the couch and eat Cheetos and build bone.
Oh, we
or
can't do
muscle
that?
for that matter,
Yeah,
right?
I can't
Nope,
sit
can't-
at I
can't. I know
can, but
some
it's up
people
to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is not stressful enough on your muscles or your bones to inspire a positive change. What you do is you come once a week, and that's one of the interesting things about what we do. Bone recovers 7 to 10 days versus muscle 36 hours. So you
Yeah.
come once a week, not 5 times a week. You apply force on 4 machines designed to capture your skeletal system below the neck, and you essentially trigger or inspire bone growth. And it's not a miracle. You can't have, if you've been losing bone for 30 years, you can't have it all back in 2 weeks or even a couple of weeks. It's going to be something that, kind of like your cardio. If you do cardio, you keep doing it and you build your cardio over time, you sustain it over time. The same holds true with what we do. We literally inspire bone growth again, and we can take people slowly from conditions of disease, osteoporosis, back to osteopenia, the precursor. We can take people from osteopenia back to normal bone. And now that we've been open 5 years and 7 years across town, we're actually starting to see our first folks go all the way from diseased osteoporotic bone all the way back to normal bone, which is extraordinary.
Amen, brother. I just think of so many lessons learned so far in this podcast, but that for people that are aging, so they're so concerned about their bone density. They're concerned
Yes.
they're like women that post menopause and just how their bodies have changed. That's a huge topic these days for women's health in the last so many years. For men now, it's man, I can't do the things I used to. I used to play tennis, used to play basketball. I can't lift like I used to, and I think I think through this podcast, it's just going to create not just awareness for people, but you're just educating on them. Hey, you need to take
Right.
some action. You can't just sit
Yeah.
there on the couch and just listen to the podcast or listen to what Matt's saying. You need to take the next
Yeah.
step. And that's action.
Yeah. And there are OsteoStrongs worldwide. Literally, there's probably 200 worldwide with 130 of them or so in the United States. They're certainly not everywhere. It's a growing franchise, but I think that you have listeners nationwide and worldwide, and there's a decent chance that there's a place near them, an OsteoStrong near them.
I think of my parents. They spent a number of years in a retirement community down in Texas, Mission, Texas. I think how impactful that would be to have it near those parts where there were seniors, because they want to get out and exercise. They want to get out. They're pretty active,
Yeah.
but to have some type of program like this set up for them, that just,
So you've heard of the villages in Florida.
oh yes.
They've got, I think they've got multiple, the villages is huge from what I understand. And they've got multiple OsteoStrongs there, and those things are just chock full.
I can imagine. That's one of the places
Yeah.
I was thinking of, because I know people that live kind of in that area. One of my, I think you're a tax accountant, and lives right in one of those parks. I think it's an area like north of Orlando, but just massive number
Yeah.
of these
Yeah.
parks that seniors live, and yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a solution to a problem that, as you said, walking into this conversation, you didn't really have full awareness of, but hopefully we can get the word out, because it literally is, you have two different futures. You have one that is less fracture prone and more capable, and one that allows you to keep doing, whatever it is you do, whether it's skiing or biking or shoot, even gardening and carrying heavy things. Those things are eventually lost if you don't take care of yourself. And I'm not saying that OsteoStrong is the be all end all to your whole wellness. We're a piece of the pie. You need to take care of your cardio. You need to take care of your muscles, but you also need to take care of your bones. Your bones are the foundation of it all. And if you don't take care of that, the rest will crumble.
I can't wait for the listeners to hear this. I just feel that they're going to be drawn to, and they're just to look into a program like that, because I think there's so many people concerned, especially at a certain age going forward, so concerned about their body, their health. And it's like, here's, like you talked about, it doesn't give you all the answers, but it's part of what you need to kind of move forward in regards to your health journey. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Good day.
So I know fatherhood and adoption. I know you have 3 kids. And so I just want to talk, because we have 2 girls adopted from China. Their ages are now 20 and 22.
Something we share.
Yeah. So we were there in 2005 and 2008. And I believe you were there just a few months after us. We were there during the Olympics in 2008. So what has kind of fatherhood taught you, and how has adoption shaped your perspective on just kind of God's heart, kind of family? Just share with us a little bit about that journey.
Okay. I'll tell you, I'm fortunate. People have told me before, they said, have all the kids you want, just don't have any teenagers. And we have been so fortunate. We have 3 beautiful, amazing, well-adjusted kids. Like, all 3 of them are just great in their own way. Each of them have a faith that's probably greater than mine, which I admire and appreciate. They're just good kids. And Sissy deserves a tremendous amount of credit for having raised them. Because again, I was a busy military guy and airline pilot, gone half the month and things like that. So really the credit is hers, but I've participated a little bit, I think. But I tell you what, so I'll share one thought from a friend of mine from pilot training who has several great kids too. And he told, do you remember, what was it in the 80s where the mantra was quality time? You would have quality time with your family. And he said, kids don't want quality time. They want quantity time. And I think that's true. And I would not say that I have been the best father in that respect. I think there's fathers out there who are much better than I, because I didn't do that. But I do think that's true. Kids need quantity time, not quality time. The other thing is, I think today our schools think that they're raising our kids and that they should be inspiring the values and thoughts and ideals that our kids should have. And I think that's not the way it should be. I think parents should be the ones raising kids. And sometimes we homeschooled 2 of our 3. And the one who went to school, Jasmine, the adopted one, she needed some additional conversations because she was getting some different ideas there that didn't match our values. And she would buy into them wholesale because that's what she was hearing. And that's what her friends were hearing. And that's what her friends espoused. And in fact, talking about her friends, they've told her that her parents, us, are bad parents. And in fact, what's funny is they still say that to this day because we didn't treat them as our best friend. I don't think you're meant to be a best friend to your child. I think you're meant to be a parent. We did not buy her a car. I love helicopters, but I don't think helicopter parenting is where it's at and giving people what they need. And the other thing about parenting is, they've done studies where if you grow a tree indoors and it's never subject to any wind, it really is a rubbery kind of weak tree. And if it is then subjected to stress, wind, or whatever else, it can't stand. The strongest trees are those that experience the greatest winds, right? They develop a resilience, a strength in opposition to those stresses that are placed upon them. And I think that's absolutely true with children as well. I think you, as a parent, need to do the opposite of what current parenting seems to be. Let's put my kid in a bubble and protect that child as much as possible. And my philosophy and is the same. You need to experience failure, maybe some pain, some discomfort, because those are the things that actually give you resilience. And in fact, what's funny is these same children or the peers of my daughter, they're not children anymore. They're actually young adults who are saying that we're such bad parents and continue to insist so. They're all in counseling and my kids are not. I'm proud of my kids. I'm proud of where they've come. I'm proud of my wife for having brought them up as and turning them into the great kids that they are. So does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's for people need to learn from as well experience failure. And they talk about your journey. You never get to a point where, hey, I've made it. It's like this upward journey. But that journey of like having successes along the way, you're going to have more failures and successes. And you need to learn from those. And you're right. Some people try to put them into a bubble or just probably protect them. And it's like, but you just need to have that. You need to be a parent, not their friend. And you need to have those conversations with them quite often. The one guy said that quantity of time. They just want some of your time. They just want you sometimes not to give them an answer, just to listen to them. And then when they ask, you're there for them to give them kind of some feedback and just that connection with your kids and that conversation. Just like with your wife and with my wife, just to have that time together and have those conversations.
It's funny you say that. My kids still actually gripe at me a little bit about that, is when they hated doing homework with me because I would tell them to figure it out rather than lead them. And maybe I took it too far, to be honest. But I always felt like if they just put a little more into it, they could figure it out themselves. And they didn't like that at all. I think they still don't like that they had to do it, but they can figure things out. There's a balance. There's a balance of being loving, but also allowing them to strain.
So with the adoption too, I know you have 3 children, and your middle child is adopted from China.
Yes. Yeah.
So why? I guess some of the listeners are wondering why adoption when you have, a biological son, I think younger, and then a biological daughter older.
Yeah. So Sissy wanted several kids, and we had difficulty having our first. It was a challenge and took some fertility drugs and things like that. And then after our first, we had 4 miscarriages, I think. And that was fairly trying and challenging. And Sissy definitely wanted to have more kids. I had never wanted to adopt because I always felt if you're going to Russia, are you dealing with some sort of alcohol, and that the child was, health is very important to you. And so I always just wondered where I could find a healthy child. And I realized that in China, they were essentially discarding perfectly healthy children. And so that's what allowed me to just conceptually entertain the idea of adoption. So we were actually pregnant with Hunter, but we didn't trust that he was going to make it the whole way because that was not our experience at that time. And so we said, okay, we'll start the adoption process. And if we have Hunter, we can turn it off. And so we successfully had Hunter. When I say successfully, both Sissy and Hunter almost died in childbirth. Sissy spent 17 days in the ICU and almost left us. Actually, did leave us once, came back, almost left us again. Hunter came out with horrible, is it ABDAR scores? Basically, he came out in bad shape, but he recovered. So after that experience, I think she still wanted to have more kids, and we didn't have the ability anymore. And so we let adoption ride.
And there you are. You have.
And so we ended up introducing a girl. We had our older daughter, and then so everything got delayed at that time, and the adoption process ended up taking
I
2.5
remember
years.
Yeah.
And so she didn't come to us until Hunter was 1 already, and so she was older. But the interesting thing, even though she was years older than he was only 1. She was smaller physically than he was. And so interestingly, she started looking up to him as her role model, a 1-year-old instead of our 6-year-old. And so things just totally exploded in the house because we had an older daughter who had been the focus of our attention, who now had 2 competitors. We had a younger who I don't recommend interrupting the birth order with an adopted child. That's not fun, but we got through it, and they're all amazing now, and they get along, and they fight like siblings do. But I appreciate the relationship that they have with each other.
Yeah, and I've talked to so many families that have adopted. My wife and I went through a divorce, and then going through all what you went through, try to have a child. And my wife just got to the point of, hey, let's just adopt. I don't want to go through this anymore. And it's just, hey, whatever you want, honey. And it's to the point where she says, she wanted girls and China. I said, wherever, I'm all on board. So we made our journey in 2005 to China, right? I think we left the day of the Chinese New Year. I don't know if you've ever been there during the Chinese New Year, but just massive number of people moving around China. And then they were during the 2008 Olympics, which was quite an experience being there during the Olympics.
That's awesome. And from what I understand, talking to you, your daughters, and so Jasmine had a tough youth. She was challenging, but she's grown into an amazing young lady. And I understand that your daughters have as well.
Yeah, they're doing amazing. So proud of them, and just their journey at ages, now they're at ages 20 and 22.
Yeah.
Moving on about your faith journey from agnostic to saying yes to Jesus. Share us about, there was a flight from LA to Minneapolis, something that happened that changed.
Other way around, yeah.
Oh, other way around. Okay, Minneapolis
Yep.
to LA. Take us back to that flight. What was happening in your heart? What led you finally to even listen to this guy and then say yes?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was agnostic. I had grown up in a Christian household, was forced to go to church every weekend, resented that to some degree. I always loved it when we could skip church and watch Robert Schuller at the Crystal Cathedral on TV instead. I did when I was 13, I did have a like I'm saved moment that was pretty powerful. But then as I got later into life and went off to college and whatnot, I slipped away and became agnostic. Not anti-religion in any sense, but I really had difficulty with what I perceived to be the hypocrisy of people in the church, right? You heard, I don't know, during the 80s and 90s, God, there was one church scandal and pastor scandal after another, right? I mean, it was just disgusting, to be honest. And you kind of forget that the church, man is not the church, right? Man is fallible. The church has men in it. Anyway, I had difficulty with that. And I supported my church. My family went to church for all these years that we've been in Minnesota. And I supported that. And I kind of perceived it kind of Boy Scouts, right? Boy Scouts makes you a better person. It gives you character. It teaches you skills, all those kind of things. And I think church does the same thing. So I appreciated church without really buying into it, or certainly without having a relationship with Jesus or my father. And I was on a trip that I was not supposed to be on. There was this weird series of events that put me on that plane that day, and I was in the back deadheading to LA in uniform. I sat next to some ladies that had just come from an apostolic conference in Minnesota there. I don't know exactly what that is, or even if I'm saying it right, apostolic conference. And we started talking, and I mentioned helicopters earlier. I've had a fascination with helicopters, and she's like, here's my son, And he's just getting out of the military, and he was a helicopter pilot. And so she's got my attention because he's a helicopter pilot. And he just got hired by Delta 3 weeks ago. So she's totally got my attention. And she starts talking to me, and she starts talking to me about me and my life in ways that I'm like, this is interesting, because like, how does she know that? How does she know that? And at some point she goes, "Can I pray for you?" And I said, yes. But then it wasn't really a, "Can I pray for you now?" or whatever. It was a vague, "Can I pray for you?" And I'm not one to turn away good karma, right? If she wants to send good energy my way, good karma my way, love my way, whatever, I'll accept it. Whether I believe it or not, I'll accept it. I'll allow it. I'll participate. If somebody offers to pray for you, why not?
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. So interestingly, she then goes to sleep. And I pull out my computer, I'm working and everything. And I look out the window and I see mountains, which means that we're on approach to LA. And I turn to her and I go, "Hey, you said you'd be willing to pray for me. Is now a good time?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, I didn't want to press you or whatever," which for me and the way I'm wired was the perfect approach. Had she come all in, full guns ablazing, I would have pushed back. But the fact that she allowed me to kind of sit in the moment and then come to her a little bit was beautifully done, perfectly orchestrated, if you will. And then she goes, "As I've been thinking, God is telling me that I should pray for you about this topic." I was like, "You are correct." And I won't go into it, but it's personal, but she was spot on. And I was like, and so she prayed for me. And again, she was just bringing out stuff. And it's, wait a minute, how could she know that about me? And so we finished praying. And at some point, I just remember looking over. So I'm in the aisle seat and she's in the window seat. And just remember leaning forward and going, "Isn't it amazing that God does this through a perfect stranger so that you know that it's real?" So after we landed, my captain, who was deadheading with me, was across the aisle. And so I went over and sat next to him. And I go, "Hey, this weird thing just happened to me." I said, "Are you religious? Are you religious at all?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "This thing just happened to me and it felt pretty real." And so interesting, we hop on the plane in LA and we go. And so we had the opportunity to talk it through. And I realized that essentially, he may have even asked me, "What are you going to do?" or something like that. And I don't know if I said it out loud, but I chose, rather than explaining it away, I'm going to accept it. I could absolutely easily explain this away. Like, she was probably just very in tune with people. She's like a psychic. So you could explain these things away, but I chose to accept it for what I believe it was, which is literally looking into the face and talking to God, who has searched me out at age 53. How he does that, I don't know. But he finds me individually as one person among the billions in the noise, and he reaches out to me. And so then I decided to be in, and I got home and I waited until I got home before telling my wife. She said, "You got to tell Topper, our campus pastor." And so I set up. So first of all, she was thrilled. She goes, "A lot of people have been praying for a long time for this, her and her mom and things like that, to bring me to Jesus." And I set up an appointment with Topper and had a great meeting with him, telling him about it and everything. Of course, he was excited. He had a bracelet on that said "one more." And I go, "I'm your one more for today." And he goes, "I have this promise principle group. It's a men's group. We meet on Tuesdays and we go." He goes, "And there's a helicopter pilot in there. I think you'd like him." And so I'm like, "Oh, helicopter pilot." So I'm like, "Okay, I'll try it out." And so I've been in that promise principle group for, I don't know, 3 years now, something like that, and really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. It's been basically just a process of saying yes. Like, I got baptized impromptu. One of those things where at the end of, it's baptism day and they go, "Hey, if anybody else would like to get in." I'm like, "You know what? If I'm all in, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I do it?" So I hopped in my jeans and got baptized, and also went through the struggle of deciding about tithing. That's not an easy call. It should be, but it's not, given the way we're wired. But I said yes to that, and just continuing trying to say yes is my journey. And certainly I could do better. I could spend more time and be more focused, but I'm happy that he found me.
What do you see different now compared to, what was it, probably 3 or 4 years ago
Mhm.
that you experienced this? What do you feel and kind of see that things different? Just
So I think it's our job to reflect him. Some other religions don't include a relationship with Jesus, a relationship with God.
that's key,
Ours
right? Yeah.
does. And ours says that really your body is his temple. He lives inside of you. And we want to take care of that temple. But the other thing is we want literally him to shine out through us and others to see him in us is what I believe. And what a friend of mine that I dearly love from years ago espoused on a phone call the other day, he says, I just want people to see Jesus in me. And so I try to consider that. And what's funny is I think it happens sometimes. And I try and do it even walking through an airport in my uniform. I try to just, in a sense, make contact with people and hope that they see him in me. And I get certain smiles and things like that make me think that occasionally is the truth. And also how I relate to people. And I don't it's not my job to judge anybody if they have a different lifestyle, a different thought on things, a different political philosophy. It's not my job to judge them. It's his. I don't have that authority. I don't have that job. It's his. And so my job is simply to love them, right? And I've got a very stoic face, a very stoic personality sometimes. Maybe that doesn't always come through, but I think it's my job to reflect him and to love. And I try to do that as you mentioned, in my job, in my interactions with my members at OsteoStrong, with the desk clerk at the hotel, with the people sitting across from me at the restaurant. So I'm aware of that. I'm aware that I would hope that others can see him in me.
I think it was a key word. I just heard that this Sunday about, I think it was Topper or maybe Pastor Rob, but about awareness. So you're more on and talking about this in Galatians too, but this awareness instead of like you just pushed everything away but we're aware of really being the light and allow Jesus to shine through us. And before that, I remember at one time in my life, it's what? I went through church and all that, but I'm not doing so good things. I'm out partying. I'm using bad language. And I like what you said about judging people, because my wife and I talk about this. You got to step back going, okay, why would I be judging them? Because that was me at one time.
Yeah.
If someone would have judged me, is that going to bring me closer to Jesus? Is that
Yeah.
am I going to be the example? So I need to look at it going, why are they out partying? Why are they using that kind of language? It's like, that was me at one time. And if I can change, and others I've had on this podcast can change, Jesus can work through anybody. He can change
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
So
And you hope that he does, but
yes.
now would be a good time.
Yeah. Right now. That's right. Don't wait till anyone and the good and also the kind of challenge it is, it's up to me, but also the challenge, it's up to me. Because it's really up to you to really have that relationship with Jesus. He's waiting.
Yeah.
All you have to do is the kind of door's open. You just have to open up the door. He's waiting for you.
The choice, he wants all of us, but the choice is he's not the one making the choice. He's not directing anything.
Yes.
It's us making the choice. So as your analogy, you've got to open the door. That day on the airplane, that door, I could have held that door shut easily. I could have easily, again, explained it away, but I opened the door. And there's no proof. There's no proof that she is what I thought she was. There's no proof anywhere. It's based on faith, which is a weird thing. It's faith doesn't match what we've been taught, and it's uncomfortable, and it's to some degree illogical, I think, but yet it's the cornerstone of what we do, because he doesn't offer proof.
Yeah. Grace is such a important word that's probably maybe not used as much. Hey, we're all sinners. The only one of perfection is Jesus, and he's our Father. He's the Almighty, the King of all kings. And so let's talk about some influential people in your life. I know you've talked about Tony Robbins, some others, but What are some other influential people in your past or present who have had a significant impact on your life?
Definitely, obviously, my mom. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. She raised me and my brother pretty much alone. I think they say a lot of psychology is which parent you were trying to please the most. And I think a lot of who I am, both pluses and minuses, are a result of my mom. But she influenced me. But more presently, I've been with Sissy for 30 years plus now. And I'm a better person for it. She has pointed out some of my shortcomings and worked on them over time. And so I'm definitely a better person for having been with Sissy for all this time. And then you talk about Tony Robbins. I would say Aaron Top from
Yes.
our campus. He's my Tony Robbins for God. It's a funny analogy, but he's just energetic and charismatic, and he's got some great ideas and philosophies, and he's not afraid to share them. So I love that guy. I think, at least as far as my faith, he's had a good influence.
And I like that. He's just so authentic and a listener,
Yeah.
but he says he's not afraid to speak and to share. And yes.
Yeah. You talk about people who aren't afraid to speak or share. There's a guy at our church named George.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy, man, unapologetically just open and love it. It's something that all of us should aspire to. It would be neat if we could all be like that, but he's extraordinary. I don't think we can be like him. We could, but it would.
At the campus, who doesn't know George? Everybody gets to know George. So as we kind of wrap this up, Meneless and David, who may be successful on the outside, but still searching something deeper. Others have maybe walked away from their faith and aren't sure what they believe. What encouragement could you leave, or would you leave with those men? And what would you tell someone who feels God may still be pursuing them?
So one of the things that I just cannot wrap my mind around, it's so impossible. I'm in Shanghai right now, and I can look out the window and see just people stacked on top of each other. There's billions of us, right? But somehow he found me and wanted me individually. He didn't want me He didn't want us collectively. He wanted me individually. He wants you, Roger, individually. He wants each of my children, my wife, individually. And for the people who are listening, he wants each of them individually. And how that works, like, I can't fathom somebody who has that much bandwidth, that much power. But yet I do know that in that moment, he was there inviting me to open the door. And so I guess but he waited until I was 53. Which in my time is forever, but maybe in his time is nothing. But he waited for the right moment. And there were some things that preceded that, my stepdad dying and things like that maybe contributed to my openness at the time. But it feels to me like a lot of wasted time. Like, why now? Why 53? But again, each of us has our time. And the biggest thing I can say is when it happens, you get a choice. Open the door or close the door. Explain it away or accept it. You get to choose. He's not going to direct it. And so one is just having an awareness, be aware or searching for that time. Realize that it may not come fast. It may not come in your time. But when it comes, it's going to be so easy to explain it away. And that's your choice. Don't accept it. Go with it. Say yes.
I love it, Matt. Say yes. Yes. So thank you so much for sharing and your willingness to share your story. This servanthood, leadership, entrepreneurship, family, health, ultimately your faith. Powerful reminder of God can meet you wherever, even at high altitude, 35,000 feet up in the it redirect our course of our lives. So before we close, where can listeners find you, learn more about OsteoStrong, and follow your story?
So I don't really post on social. There's really nothing to follow from me. But if you want to learn more about how you can affect your bone health, your moms, your aunts, your grandmas, go to osteostrongmn.com. And that's OsteoStrongMN, like Minnesota. and you can learn all about that scan that you talked about that might be important for learning your health, but also what you can do to either deal with low bone density or prevent low bone density.
All right, that's a wrap with Matt Rytting. And I want to thank you for being part of Men Pursue More podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.